This video is to help installers understand their obligations with regards to information iEnergytech requires for a job to be determined as being complete. So of course we know that an installer has to supply a CES, has to carry out testing and commissioning, perhaps basic training and handover, fill out an EWR form, solar connection form, get the customer signature for the STC assignment form if that's relevant. These are all things the installer is required to do under the standards, as well as to provide iEnergytech with a basic single line diagram um, so that we can comply with the requirements of AS5033. To make things easier for the installer, we have developed this app which we call Soorya, Soorya, and I will run through what's required here to address the list of requirements I just mentioned a few moments ago. So obviously you go to your iPhone and ensure at the start you've got FileMaker Go 18 or the latest version in case new versions come out after this video, and you tap Soorya, which opens up, and you go to your project. So you tap the hamburger icon on the top left hand side, you get a list here, and you click project list, and I will go to a project which I recently completed. Can be a bit slow if you haven't connected for a while, and on that note we are looking at what to do to make this quicker. So I think that's project 1850. I'll just go down. Eastfield Park, here we are, project 1850. So you tap on the project, and you go in. Now on the top right hand side you've got a little wheel. On this screen you've got important information. You've got the name of the customer, his telephone contact, the location, which sometimes shows up in this strange format, but if you tap the map icon on the left, or in the case of the phone number on the left, phone icon, etc., you will be automatically directed to that location, so your navigation software will be started. Here, as you go down further, you've got the top view of the system, and you've got a little write-up as to the design and importantly what the installer scope is. So in this case, the scope was solar photovoltaic system. We had to relocate the antenna, we have to install a modem, we've got to set up the monitoring and put a cage around the inverter if outside. So this is where you as an installer are able to establish what is the scope of my work. In some very, very rare cases, the monitoring was not going to be set up, but of course, as you know, under AS5033 we have to provide earth fault monitoring, and that can either be done through the software or through an external alarm. Under info, which is the third tab, you've got the spans that are required for this job. If you're in the mid zone or the edge zone, what is the gap between the rows? In this particular case, as you can see, the system, the panels are pretty much butted up against each other, so therefore we will maintain our 20 millimeter gap. And what is the gap between the front and rear rail? Well, it's anywhere from 945 to 1345 millimeters. You will be able to discern or establish from here what fixing we're using. We're using the fixed W because it's a corrugated roof, and what rail we are using. So you're prepared before you get to site with a fair amount of basic information. We tap the little wheel on the top right hand side and we get another menu. Now Just running through this, you've got project home, which is where we've just been. We've got notes. Now, notes is just a section where you are able to go in and get information. So especially for larger projects, we might have things like certain designs. You can tap view attachments and you can see more detailed information. So if I view photo, I've got this here. And that's very handy. You can email that to yourself or print it out if you so wish. Any other information we want to share with you is again going to be here. So this was me mucking around. Sorry, there's no attachment here, so let's ignore that. And you can add a new note if you want with the plus sign there. Back to that, so that's notes. So that's typically always going to be green because you are not required to go in there and complete anything. And that's the basic structure of this list, is that it is generally speaking grayed out. As you complete each section, it becomes green, a green tick appears, and in our software, in our office, we are able to see this happen as well. Hence, we know that these sections have been completed. Now, I've gone through the notes, which, as I said right from the start, is going to be green because you don't have to go in there and do anything. Project home will always come up green by default. Sections also will come up green by default. What is sections? Well, when you go into sections, you will get information that would have been picked up by the site surveyor at the initial stage of scoping the project out. So in this particular case, there is a porch starting at the bottom, going up, there's the main switchboard and meter box, and then there's the main roof. And for each of these things, if you tap, say, for example, main roof, you've got information. How many fire emergency panels are there? What's the terrain category? What's the building importance level? What's the wind region? This is all so that we can comply with AS5033. So this might seem a little bit onerous, but it's compliance. And every so often you'll see a little button which says photos. So this is two photos. If I go in here, I can see the two photos for the system. I can see the roof, I can see the side elevation, and you can even put some comments in these speech bubbles. You can add more photos if you want. So this is how we share with you information for this of the site. Similarly, we can go to the main switchboard and meter box, and again there are 6 photos this time. So the meter box is there. That's the main switchboard. Sometimes we'll take the escutcheon off and take photos inside so you can see the bus bar arrangement and how far down the bus bar extends. And then we've got the porch. Again, 2 photos here now, so that's the porch, which we are not installing on. Something else I should mention in regards to this particular section is you'll notice the top section is kind of grayed out and then the lower section is light beige. That's because the gray section, this darkish section, is the same for every section. Make sense? Well, when we go to the main switchboard or the porch or the main roof, this grayed section is universal. It doesn't change because the site has got a certain number of fire emergency panels. The terrain category is not going to change. And when you look through this, just going from top to down, if you go to 4th from the bottom, is the meter panel adjacent to the main switchboard? The answer is no. This is handy for us because we will then supply labels based on that information. As you know, when the meter panel is separate from the main switchboard, we have to provide extra labels. How many meters are there? Is the main switchboard a circuit breaker type or a fuse based type? And how many phases have been connected to this site? So that's generic information relevant to the site. And then as we go further down, we are now looking at information for that particular section. In this case, the section we're looking at is the porch. And so not much has been filled out here because we were not going to use this area. But if I go to The main roof, you might find some information filled out here, and there you go. You can see it's a metal roof. Customer profile, not applicable as per our checks. Corrugated centers 76 millimeters, that's standard for any corrugated roof. Walkway is not required, etc. This is all information relevant to that section. In this manner, we can collect information on a site or for a site and touch across multiple sections and park that information in an orderly manner, which is easy for all of us to access. So coming back now, that's the sections. Then we go to the swims. Now with the swims, this will come out green as you complete it. So in this particular case, we reviewed all the swims and then we signed off. And so when I go back, and if I go into another section now, when we come back, swims becomes green. That's a peculiarity of Soorya, is that it won't become green instantly. It's only going to show up as green when you go into another section and come out, or into another sub tab and come out. So here you can see that was done. We go to components. In components, you're going to have an idea of all the different, just going back here, components that have been supplied to this site. Essentially, you are looking at the headers out of our quotation. So we quoted for racking, modules, a modem, and various other bits. The interesting thing for you as an installer here, or the areas of importance for you, are modules. So if you go into modules, you can see all the key pieces of data which we have summarized here. But if you want to go and corroborate any of this by yourself, you can open the module data sheet on the left or open the installation guide. So that's the module data sheet. You can blow it up. It's all pinch and zoom on the iPhone, which is great. And if you don't trust the numbers, you can open the installation manual, which I think takes a little bit of a while because it's a large document. And there you go. And you can start corroborating. For example, what are my spans? Installation with clamps. Fair enough. That's what we're doing. What are my spans? And what are my cantilevers? All right. That's modules. The other key piece of equipment we use on our systems is, of course, the inverter. And then the question comes up to do it in compliance with AS5033, in compliance with AS3000, especially clause 1.7.1. What do we have to do? It's all good for the standards to say we need to comply. Shall, no choice, with manufacturer specifications. But then, as we know, it can be a bit of an issue finding these manufacturer specifications. So here again, we've got that in an easy to find way. I hadn't populated this because this project was done rather hurriedly, but again, you'll be able to open the inverter data sheet and the installation manual. But you've also got access here to number of MPPTs, what is the minimum voltage, maximum voltage, DC terminal torque, AC terminal torque, does the cable retainer need to be torqued, inverter covered torque, chassis torque. Useful information, easy to find with a touch of a few buttons. I don't think we need to go through much else here because that's not necessarily relevant. So components, once you've checked off every item, will go to green. Customer greeting. This was more relevant to when we were running the Solar Savers program. So basically you meet the customer, you give him the reference number. If it's not Solar Savers, you give him reference number of the job. You confirm the design. Well, you show him the photo and you say, this is how we're designing your system. Give him an idea of how long it's going to take. Confirm availability for the day if necessary. Find out, point number 5, find out when he's going to be available to sign the forms. This is important. Without that signature, we can't get the STCs. and remind the customer to refer to next steps in the quotation provided. So we don't want the customer bothering you with what happens after, what happens after. No, that's already in the quotation we gave him, her, and it's outlined under what we call next steps. And well, domestic sites check if there are any special concerns, dogs, patients in the house. We had a case in one place where we had a patient who liked to escape from the house. Genuine case. This wasn't someone held there. This was someone who was ill and actually got out when a gate was left open. So just be aware of all these issues. Incidentally, very briefly, stepping back to swims, if you are not happy with any of the swims, you can modify. You can add a swims or a hazard. So you have that flexibility. All right, so we've been to customer greeting. Now I'll take you to module barcodes. And again, customer greeting didn't turn green until I went into module barcodes, and now low customer greeting turns green. So that's in the spirit of what I mentioned before. It's only when you go into another sub tab and out that the previous one turns green. Barcodes, this is where you will scan your barcodes. This is critical. Absolutely, we need this information, and the new clean energy regulator requirements are we need a serial number and we need a photograph of the module barcode. Soorya is great because all you do is you say scan barcode and you press go and just bring it near the barcode. It will automatically take a photograph and capture the barcode and populate the relevant fields. It'll give you a running total. It says here you got 45 out of 45, which is great. If by chance you end up duplicating a barcode, it will give you a warning and allow you the opportunity to delete one of the two, since you have two which are of the same module. And you can then look at the two and say, which one do I want to keep? Maybe one is slightly out of focus. I'll delete that one. And that's your module barcodes. Inverter barcodes, exactly the same process. I shan't go in. Quality control. This is, again, very important. You have to fill in these sections. All right. So let's take one as an example, cable work. Now we are going to try and make these screens a little bit easier to navigate, but right now this is how it is. So you've got 10 questions, and as you can see, I've answered 100% of the questions. And you go in and you say wiring adjustment of the DC circuit under modules to be such that there are no loops. I don't think the word adjustment is correct here. It means it should have been arrangement. And what we're talking of is under AS 5033, you should, this is not a shall, but in iEnergytech, a should in the standards is as good as a shall. There's a standard we work to. And there should be no wiring loops. If you have any questions about what a wiring loop is, let me know, but it's essentially a situation where if you've got 4 panels and then you got another 4 behind these, so you got a grid of 2 rows of 4, and you got your DC isolator coming out at, let's say, the top 4 on the right hand side. Your return cable, you can't just pick the shortest path. Your return cable may well end up going in a U shape around all 8 modules. So you've got a gap. You don't have a complete loop. This is important. A lot of installers make this mistake and they think, well, it's not so important. It is, because you could have a system running at say 580 volts VOC. You have a freak storm during good light and some sort of an inductive occurrence, and you have an increase in voltage. You cross the 600 volt threshold, and maybe your inverter has a maximum voltage of 600 volts and you blow a component on it. No wiring loops. You can also put a comment here if you're not, if you wish to, like maybe you couldn't comply or you made a mistake. You move to the next one. All cable work done by or under direct supervision of an electrician. Laid in roof by electrician or under direct supervision. Laid in cable tray by electrician or under direct supervision. Now, don't fast forward. That's a common mistake. You're watching this video and you think, yep, I know all this stuff. Please go through every step. You're only going to do it once. Wiring is protected from mechanical damage. Install hat sections if on a flat roof. That's the bending radius for the DC cable. Did you comply? Did you use multi-hole seals? Question 8 of 10. Separation of DC, AC and comms cable. That's a requirement. Segregation of circuits. Only matching connectors used. That's a mandatory requirement under AS 5033. PV connectors tightened using prescribed process and tools. No use of pliers. No use of counterfeit MC4 crimping tools. You have to use the right tools and the right tightening spanners. And that's it. If you try and press the right side button, it doesn't scroll through anymore. You go back, and that's your 10 out of 10. And then we say we want some photographs taken. So here you go. There's a photograph, and I can look at it and see that, yeah, that's pretty good. I can see the connectors, I can see the cable. It's just an indication of how the cable work has been done. What's this photo over here? View photo. I think this is probably at the board where we did the sealing. Anyway, so in that fashion, you go through this quality control checklist. Now this is similar to the CEC checklist which they've got on their website, but again we are saving you the hassle of having to download the form, fill it out, etc. You're doing this yourself. There may be some occasions when it asks for too many photographs. Apologies for that little bug. Like if it says flashings, I want 15 photos, and you think 15? Seriously? I only have one subject here. How do I take 15 photos for one subject? Well, just create a new photo and just say cancel, and it'll have a new photo. And when you go back, it'll now say 3 of 2. So as we clear the bug, just that's one way to manage creating an empty container field with no photo. You can take these photos on your phone and load them later. So for example, if I go in here, photos, and I want to put a new photo, I can say insert from camera or insert from photos. All right. I don't want this particular photo. Tap, delete, and I'm back to 4 photos. As you complete this, it all goes green bit by bit, and then your QC is all done. That's quality control. Testing and commissioning of the system. So the testing and commissioning of the system, we set up the parameters beforehand to make life easy again for you. I still remember the days when I'd be up with one of our installers, and at the time of testing and commissioning, we are saying, hey, what's the VOC on the module? Oh, have a look at the back of the module. You pull out a felt pen, you're writing it on your hand, you're doing the maths there. Hang on, that's all done here. So let's go to string tests. String 1.1.a. What does 1.1.a mean? Inverter 1, MPPT1, string A. The next one is string B, same MPPT. The third one is string A, second MPPT. In all cases, it's in number inverter 1 in this installation because we have only one inverter. So if I go in here and it says, have you done the polarity check? Yes. Oops. Scroll through at the bottom, record successful operation of rooftop DC isolator under load. Usually something I do at the very end. I leave the system running, go on the roof, turn off the DC isolator, turn it back on. That's a requirement under the AS5033. It's a shall, not a should, a shall. The same applies to the DC isolator under the inverter. You are required to operate it under load to test it. Enter the measured string voltage in volts and compare to the expected. So here you are. We've got a number 609. Where's this number coming from? This is the number of modules in the string multiplied by the VOC. We've done the maths and stuck it there for you. You can corroborate it, but we've saved you the time. We've also gone ahead and applied the lowest temperature and come up with a new VOC. So it says here, and maximum expected VOC, which is, oops, sorry, I'll just stop scrolling here. Hang on a moment. 652. Now this is important because you look at this and you say, hang on, this is over 600 volts. I've got to put new signage, and I certainly can't install this system on somebody's house because the requirements are we can't exceed 600 volts. So this is to help you gather this information, and in this case I measured the voltage. It was 556. Not too bad. We're slightly off, but you know, hey, depends on the time of day and where the sun was. In this particular case, quite low. Enter measured ISC, short circuit current. You are not required to do this test, and so forth. Therefore the value here was left at 0. Insulation resistance, positive to earth, negative to earth. Earthing resistance for modules to rails, and from rails to inverter. Now you could do that whole test in the one go, straight from the modules to the earthing. So this is a fairly involved test because you've got to run a long lead to do the test. It is a mandatory requirement under the Australian standards. Enter the time. Enter irradiance. Well, it was cloudy with some sun, or if you've got an irradiance meter, you put in the actual irradiance. Ambient temperature. Was export control implemented? No. And this now is the whole set of questions relating to the string. We then have a set of questions for the inverter, which are required as per the standards. Has it been set to AS4777? Yes. We had one installer setting them to an international 50 Hz standard. Not correct, because the maximum voltage was different from AS4777. So make sure we do it to AS4777. Shutdown time must be under 2 seconds. Just run a stopwatch. How long did it take to restart? Has the inverter firmware been upgraded? Now this is an example of where we're looking for honesty and not necessarily the perfect answer every time. So I didn't do it because I didn't have the software available, but we are going to connect this system online, and because of that we can update the firmware. So I said not done, and then you can put a comment here if you need to. Enter AC operating voltage 248. Enter AC operating current 8.13 amps. So that's the whole current of the system at that time. And that's it. Now just briefly back to the string tests. So recall we had here 556 volts. I go to the second string, 555. Now I've not made these numbers up. I know this is common practice in the industry. Just sit down at a desk and make the numbers up. We of course are the exception. 556. So that gives me a good idea that all my string voltages are fairly even. All right. And then finally you come to system tests. Quite often this is left out. And here, as you set up the system monitoring, you've got to fill all this out. This is important. Please go through it carefully. Without this information, we cannot complete the customer manual. And that's your testing and commissioning. Mine hasn't turned green. One, I haven't gone into another tab and come out. But secondly, my system information hasn't been supplied yet. I have to do that. Then we have the training and handover. So here you take your customer through these different things. You click on this and what does it say? Oops, it goes green. Customer to operate on-screen display. Please don't you operate the on-screen display. Get the customer to do it. Let them get comfortable with their system. What do the buttons feel like? How much pressure should they apply? Let them go through the screen and explain the values. Next one, customer to shut down and restart the system. Not installer, customer. Again, you go there, customer to shut down and restart the system. Get the customer to turn off, 1F missing, the system. AC first and then turn on the system, DC first. All too often, we are sitting in the office and we get a call from the customer who says, how do I turn my system off? And we say, well, there's a switch underneath the inverter. If you have turned your AC off, turn that off. And they say, it's too stiff. What am I supposed to do? Had they done it before during training and handover, then they would be prepared for that stiffness and would deal with it. Explain the earth fault alarm. So there is, through these three dots, an explanation for every one of these items. I won't go through all of them now, but that's the training and handover. Here, you must get the customer's signature and it'll turn into a green tick. This signature is propagated across to the EWR and the STC assignment form, and a message will come up saying that that's the case. You must tell the customer your signature will now be used on the EWR form and STC assignment form. And then of course it will have turned green. Then you go to the EWR form. We've tried to make life easy for you by not expecting you to fill everything out on the EWR form, like the customer's name, his address, etc. We've already got that information. So we're just asking for the information which we don't have. Fill this out, miss one item, it won't go green. So be diligent as you go through this. And these questions are exactly as per the current EWR form. And then we go to as built. Now, what is as built? As built is, how did you build the system? This is how we as designers conceived the design. What did you actually do? Did you actually have three phases? Yes, I did. What is the switchboard you connected to? Main switchboard. All right. What was the size of cable you ran between the main switchboard and the inverter? We ran 10 mil. Okay, cool. What's the length of the cable? Well, ours was 11 meters. Why is this information important? Because as an installer providing compliant solar PV systems, we are supposed to calculate the voltage rise. Without this information, we at iEnergytech cannot do that. What is the rating of the inverter supply main switch? This is the switch which is in the switchboard. Now I don't remember, I'm going to have to refer to my photos, so I won't fill this out. If PC is connected to a switchboard, this is grayed out. Why? Because we connected to the main switchboard. Had I selected a subboard here, all these fields would be available. So we simply go forward. Location and ID of rooftop DC isolator. We can't tell. We cannot divine where the rooftop DC isolator has been installed. We need to know from the installer. In this particular case, I did the installation myself, so I know, so I can create the as-built drawings to comply with AS5033. In your case, all you do is just tap this DC isolator, click to add a drawing, make a rough drawing on a piece of paper, and take a photograph. And that's it. We've got the information. The same applies to panel layout. We need to know, did you change the arrangement we gave you? Did you change which panels are in which string? We need to know that. This isn't an option. This is required by us. Again, just take a drawing, take a photo and upload it here. That way we know which panels are in which string. And that's your as-built. CES. Now you prepare your CES. From your phone, once you've got your CES, you can upload the PDF. Okay, I'll cancel here because I don't have the CES. Um, and at the end of it, you click submit. Now, if everything has been done well and there's no bugs in the system, sorry, we do have bugs sometimes, the submit should work fine. That submit comes through to us, and we can tell that everything has been done. Your invoice now gets approved for payment. If this is not done correctly, not just a case of being done, but done correctly, the invoice doesn't get approved for payment. So there you go. That's the um, those are the different sections. I've been through all of them. If you have any questions, you come back to the office and speak to any of the members of the team there. Thank you.